Candidates, good afternoon. I'm Mr. Mhlongo, back here with you today on our lesson. We are continuing with economic pursuits, and our focus area is still on economic growth and development. Today we are completing the topic economic growth and development. Remember, last week we covered on economic growth and development in terms of giving the difference between the two. Then we discussed in detail demand side approaches to economic growth and development. And then we briefly discussed supply side approaches to economic growth and development. And today we continue according to our ATP. The focus area is on South African growth and development policies to economic growth and development. And then also we'll discuss North-South divide. Then lastly, we'll discuss briefly globalization challenges. Please join me. Let's see what we have in the pocket. So the following are the lesson objectives that will be achieved during the course of this lesson. After this lesson, you will be able to discuss in detail and evaluate South African growth and development policies. You will be able to briefly discuss the North-South divide. You will also be able to briefly discuss globalization challenges faced by South Africa. So remember, whenever the objective says you will be able to discuss in detail, we simply mean that's an essay. Remember, anything that's saying discuss in detail for economics, that will mean at this level we are discussing or we are writing an essay. And then briefly discuss, that is North-South divide according to this information here on our objective. That can be from the minimum of 1 mark to the maximum of 10 marks as for North-South divide. It can be 2 marks, can be 4 marks. It can be 8 marks also in the discussion question, like your 3.4, 4.4. It can also be 8 marks if it's 3.5, where you critically analyze or evaluate. It can also be 10 marks if the question based on this content comes in the additional part. And then number 3, briefly discuss globalization challenges faced by South Africa. The same thing here. This can be a part of either 1 mark, 2 marks, 4 marks, 8 marks, or 10 marks. It will depend where the question comes in. We have seen it the most coming in 8 marks questions where you briefly discuss, or also in the higher order question for 8 marks, which can be 3.5, 4.5. It is very important for you to know that this content that we are doing today is a part of economic pursuit, and also it's our paper 1. We are doing paper 1, so it's a part of paper 1. It can be found in section A, which is question 1, section B, which is question 3, question 4, and then section C. This content can also be found in question number 6 because it's a part of economic pursuit. More details will be discussed as we'll be preparing for our preparatory examination, where we'll be giving you the layout of question paper and also allocation of questions per topic. So since we were together last week, you already know the following concept based on economic growth and development. You can be able to distinguish or briefly discuss economic growth and development. You can be able to discuss economic growth and development policies. The same policies, some of them were discussed last year in your grade 11. So this is the continuity. And then you can also be able to discuss in detail the characteristics of developing countries. Remember, this content is very important for you if we have to learn about North-South divide, because it's a part of that particular topic. But in grade 11, we're talking about the characteristics of developed and developing countries. But this year, we are talking about North-South divide. The content is 95% similar. And then also you'll be able to, you are also aware and we are able to discuss characteristics of developed countries, which also give us the North-South divide, which is known to be a division between developed and developing countries. So this is the lesson. The lesson of this, the board of this lesson is as follows. We have economic growth and development policies. which will be discussed in detail because it's part of the essay. North-South divide, globalization challenges, as well as the environment. So, in brief, economic growth and development policies here, we refer to the policies that were formed by South African government since 1994 to ensure improvement of economic development and the increase in economic growth. These policies, some of them are redress policies. They include the likes of the RDP, Reconstruction and Development Program, GEA, Growth, Employment and Redistribution, EPWP, which is Expanded Public Work Program, ASGISA, which is Accelerated and Shared Growth Initiative for South Africa, JIPSA, which is Joint Initiative for Priority in Skill Acquisition, B-BBEE, which is Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment, NDP, which is National Development Plan, NGP, which is New Growth Path, NSDS, which is National Skills Development Strategy. So these policies were formed by South African government to ensure that it's able to accelerate economic growth and development within the country. Then, as we talk about North-South divide, the focus area here is to look at the difference between developed and developing nations, or developed and developing countries. Remember, the North-South divide is the world division or world stratification between developed and developing countries. So you already know the characteristics of developing countries and those of developed countries. So in this situation, it's more like a revision, but you have changed the concept. The North-South divide is also known as development gap or development continuum gap. Here we look at developing countries compared to developed countries. We normally say developed countries are normally found on the northern hemisphere of the world, while developing countries are found at the southern hemisphere of the world. However, we do have developed countries that are already now found in the northern hemisphere. The North-South divide simply shows us the difference or the gap between developed and developing countries. Remember that developed countries are having the feature of high life expectancy because people in there have access to proper healthcare facilities. There's a high level of literacy rate of education. People are very much educated and they are skilled. They have high level of productivity because they invest the most in manufacturing sector than investing in the primary sector. There's high level of economic growth because their productive capacity is at the highest level. They don't face the issue of unemployment faced by developing countries. And then if we check developing countries, they are faced by the issue of low life expectancy. People in there are not having access to proper healthcare services and facilities. There is high level of poverty faced by developing countries. Unemployment is too high. Also, these countries are less invested in manufacturing sector because they have less capacity to produce and less investment or capital. They mainly focus on investing in agricultural sector or primary sector resources. They are not well invested on manufacturing sector. They have lack of technology. And then globalization challenges. Developing countries are faced by some challenges in the, within the world or under globalization. These challenges include the issue of trade, growth, and poverty. They are unable to trade effectively across the world or within the globalization because they are faced by weak currencies. Their currencies are weak. It is difficult for them to be able to afford goods and services from developed countries because their currencies are too strong compared to those of developing countries. Also, as they trade, they are faced by the challenge of being manipulated by developed countries because they export their minerals or natural resources at the lower cost and import them as finished goods at the higher cost. that make it difficult for them to trade effectively. The other issue is that developed countries normally impose more tariffs or levies on imported goods from developing countries to try and reduce them from flowing into their countries. That becomes a challenge. Even if there are some trade agreements between developed and developing countries, developed countries benefit the most than developing countries. There's a lot of exploitation that occurs. And then we talk about the growth. Developing countries find it very difficult to grow within the globalization. Firstly, because they are faced by the issue of lack of capital. They don't have enough capital to process their minerals or natural resources to final goods. Therefore, for that reason, they sell them as natural resources having the strategic value, which means they have less monetary value because they have not been transformed. Also, they have most of infant industries. The industries, industries in developing countries are very much infant. They are not well industrialized or developed. They're still very weak and young. So it is difficult for them to be very competitive in the global market because they compete with multinational industries out there. So it is easy for them to be driven out of the market by those multinational industries because multinational industries are faced by the advantage of economies of scale. They produce more goods at the lower cost per unit and sell them at the lower cost. But industries that are still infants in developing countries are faced by the issue of diseconomies of scale. They produce less goods and services at the higher cost per unit and sell them at the higher cost, which make our local industries now finding it very difficult to compete and to grow our economy under globalization. Also, our local industries have less capacity to even produce more goods and services. They lack capital. That is a basic. They don't have enough technology. So the growth of developing countries or southern countries under globalization is very, very difficult. Normally, developed countries are the most beneficial. And then when we talk about the environment, we know that most of what we do economically occur within the environment. So developed countries are the most polluters of the environment because as they burn fossil fuels and produce greenhouse gases that damage ecosystem and also ozone layer. That result to unpredictable change in weather patterns, which is known to be a climate change. That leads to global warming. If they burn fossil fuels, that can lead to the global warming. Temperatures can be high and low or can be too high, which will affect the entire environment in the world. So hence I'm saying developed countries are the most polluters of the environment. They also delay adopting eco-friendly machines that are less polluting into the environment. They keep on using machines that are not environmental friendly or that are not eco-friendly because they want to maximize their profits. So those are the challenges that are faced by the developing countries or southern countries within the globalization. It's very important for you to know that this one will work 40 marks if it comes in. It can also be data response for 10 marks. It can also be 8 marks. It can also be 2 marks where they say maybe mention any 2 growth policies or development policies. North-South divide can be from 1 mark to 10 marks. Provided if ever is 10 marks can be a part of data response or additional part. And then 1 mark there can be identification or mention. And then 4 marks should be the mutually higher order question. The globalization challenge is 1 to 10 marks also. Environment also 1 to 10 marks. So in this situation, we only have 1 essay that will be discussed, which is growth and development policies. So these policies were formed from 1994 until today. So economic policies formed since 1994 today are reform policies which have common objective, which is mainly to improve social welfare and the well-being of the economy. So the aim of these policies is to ensure that the social wellness, social welfare, meaning people are able to access basic needs, people living standards are improving, and also ensuring that economy is able to grow and be stable within them being formed. So some of these policies were introduced to redress apartheid economy by giving the priority to former marginalized people. That can be the broad-based black economic empowerment, which is new because remember we initially had the black economic empowerment. After that, we had the B-BBEE. So it's one of the redress policies that were formed to ensure that it gives priority to former marginalized people. The democratic economic policies aim at building a united, non-sexist and non-racial society. They also aim at building the single integrated economy in South Africa where poverty is eradicated with economic inequalities. So they aim at ensuring that inequalities are no longer existing in South Africa. Also, poverty is not the part of South African society. So here are the policies with their years. We have a policy here, a year in which the policy was formed. Then decide, also indicating if the policy is a growth or development policy. It is very important for you to be able to give the difference. If the policy is a growth policy, remember, if it's a growth policy, the main focus is to ensure that there is improvement in economic growth of the country. If it's a development, is concerned with the welfare of the nation. So a reconstruction and development program that was formed, this one was formed in 1994, is a developmental policy because one of the objectives of the policy is to ensure that there is improvement of living standard for South African citizens. They have access to basic needs that include housing, sanitation, water, electricity, etc. So it becomes the developmental policy because the main concern in there is to ensure that there is a social wellness. People are having access to those basic needs. Growth, employment, and redistribution. It was formed in 1996. This one is the growth policy because the focus area here was to ensure that South Africa reduces budget deficit. At the same time, there is a sustained economic growth that is export-oriented. Also aim to ensure that all macroeconomic objectives are achieved by South Africa, which include economic growth, full employment, price stability, economic equity, as well as exchange rate stability. And then a broad-based black economic empowerment. It was formed in 2014. This one is a development policy. Remember, initially we had a black economic empowerment. Then it was replaced because of fraud that was in place, whereby some people were fronting using former marginalized people in front so that they can be beneficiaries through procurement within the BEE policy. Expanded Public Works Program, EPWP, formed in 2004, is also a part of the development policy because this policy mainly focuses on reducing inequalities within South Africa, improving welfare of the nation and in underdeveloped areas where there is high level of unemployment and poverty. Also improving skills that can be used even when an EPWP contract has lapsed. And then NSDS, National Skill Development Strategy. It was formed in 2005. It's a developmental policy because it was there to ensure that there is a skill acquisition and skill development for the workforce, ensuring that workforce continues to be trained even in the workplace so that they become productive and efficient citizens within our industries in South Africa. And then we have ASGISA, which is Accelerated and Shared Growth Initiative for South Africa. This one is a growth policy. It was formed in 2005 also to ensure that there's sustainable economic growth, ensure that there's improvement, there's investment in critical infrastructure so that some project can take place in the country. Joint Initiative on Priority Skills Acquisition in South Africa, JIPSA. It's a developmental policy. It was formed in 2006. The main aim was to ensure that there's an improvement of skills in South Africa so that we become efficient as we produce goods and services. A new growth path, NGP, formed in 2010, is a growth policy because it was formed to ensure that there's effective economic growth in South Africa. A national development plan, which is currently going on, was formed in 2012. It's a development policy. Remember, it functions to ensure that we have reduced economic inequalities. There is less poverty and people living standards are improved by 2030. Small Business Development Promotion Program, 2014. It's a growth policy because it functions to ensure that small businesses get support so that they can be able to function in the market without some barriers or some difficulties that can block them. funding is extended to these businesses to ensure business such as SMMEs to ensure that they are fully functioning to reduce the level of unemployment and ensure economic growth within South Africa. So here we start with this topic, which is now economic growth and development policies themselves. We discussed it in detail with objective explanation as well as evaluation. We will be evaluating the success and the failure of the policy that was formed since 1994. So RDP is an anti-poverty strategy. So that means RDP focuses on ensuring that South Africans are not facing any poverty or are not faced by any poverty. It was formed in 1994 with the aim of eradicating consequences of apartheid by meeting people's basic needs. The main focus area is to ensure that people are able to meet their basic needs in South Africa so that their living standard can be improved. This is the economic development strategy that aims at improving social welfare with priority to the provision of basic needs to former marginalized people. So remember, if we talk about former marginalized South Africans, we talk about people that were not given opportunities previously during oppressive laws. So those people are former marginalized. The RDP is an integrated, coherent socio-economic policy framework. It seeks to mobilize countries' resources towards the final eradication of apartheid and building a democratic, non-racial, and non-sexist future. And then we'll continue. That was just a brief. Economic imbalances were widening, so it was necessary for the government to implement a redress policy to focus on improving lives of marginalized people. So the government noticed that there were huge imbalances that were existing in 1994. Then the government decided to bring about the policies that are known to be redress policies or transformational policies to ensure that these imbalances are reduced. Former marginalized people are able to benefit and access those basic needs so that they can live reasonable lives. The provision of basic needs which measure social welfare, such as electricity, clean running water, sanitation, was ignored in some human settlement, meaning people did not have housing, did not have electricity, did not have water, did not have sanitation. So for that sake, the state had to intervene and ensure that those basic needs are provided. Most underprivileged people were unskilled, which hampered them from great opportunities for fairly participating in the economy. So former marginalized people in South Africa, mostly black people, were not well skilled or they were not skilled. So that for that reason, they were not marketable. They were unable to participate openly in the economic mainstream because they were lacking some skill for them to be employable, even starting their own businesses. High level of poverty on the marginalized was the main concern. People were living under poverty the most because people did not have income for survival. They were living through farming and agriculture. That was mainly their sources of income if they were unemployed, due to the fact that they did not have skills. So the following are the objectives of RDP. So firstly, it was formed to ensure that people have access to basic needs such as water, electricity, housing, sanitation, etc. That is the first one, in which it was formed to ensure that all of these things that I've mentioned are provided to people. The first priority is to begin to meet basic needs of people: jobs, land, housing, water, electricity, telecommunication, transport, a clean and healthy environment, nutrition, healthcare, and social welfare. Those are the main basic needs in which it was formed to ensure that it's able to achieve. Developing our human resource. This is to ensure that people are able to acquire skills, are able to get skills so that they can become marketable and be productive citizens. This allows them to participate openly and freely in economic mainstream. The RDP is a people-centered program, meaning it focuses on improving people. It aimed at involving the decision-making process, implementation in new job opportunities requiring new skills, and managing and governing the society. Building the economy. So removing the factors inhibiting the economy. So ensuring that factors that were against the improvement of the economy were removed or eradicated. Aimed at promoting industry, trade and commerce, and resource-based industries, to upgrade infrastructure, to reform the financial sector, and address labor and workers' rights, ensuring that the workforce is having rights that are being exercised and taken care of. In building the economy, programs dealing with the following areas are dealt with: linking construction and development, the industry, trade and commerce, resource-based industries, upgrading infrastructure, labor and worker rights. So those are some of the objectives that were aimed when the RGP was aiming at building the economy. We continue. Democratizing the state and the society, ensuring that it implements democracy to people. People understand the democracy so that they can function very well in South Africa. It aims at to create accountable and transparent processes and structures for national, provincial, and local governments and civil societies, ensuring that all those authorities in the public figure are held accountable for their actions, are able to be transparent enough to the society, so that resources can be used efficiently without any corrupt manner. Implementing RGP. This involves building government's capacity and creating ways to coordinate the activities between departments and various levels of government by implementing the coordination structures, planning, framework, and financing of RGP. So it was there to ensure that reconstruction is in place of the wellness and the economy. Then also there is development in place, ensuring that people are really having an opportunity to be out of poverty, having an opportunity to have their living standards being improved, than being stuck below poverty line. So it was aiming at creating dynamic economy that creates new and suitable jobs, ensuring that the economy is able to create job opportunities for those that are unemployed, alleviate poverty, low wages and extreme inequalities in wage and wealth, ensuring that there is no poverty in South Africa. But then as much as we have this aim, we still have an issue of poverty in South Africa, because some people are receiving lowest income that is below the poverty line. Ensuring that inequalities are being reduced in South Africa, which is still an issue, because most of income in South Africa or wealth is possessed by few people, while less income is and wealth is possessed by few people. Address economic imbalances and structural problems in the economy, ensuring that economic imbalances do not exist, which is to reduce inequalities, by the way. Integrate South Africa's economy into the world economy by using sustainable domestic manufacturing capacity and increasing the export potential. So the aim was also to ensure that the South African economy is well competitive internationally and under globalization. Also ensuring that the country invests the most in manufacturing sector than having to invest only in primary sector, which is believed to be the main component of South African economy. It was there to encourage that South African businesses are well industrialized to compete in the global market or become more competitive. Address uneven development within the region of South Africa and between the country of Southern Africa, ensuring that there are no inequalities. Also, the development is going on within South Africa as a whole. There is no region that is left behind. However, as much as we have this objective, we know that some areas in South Africa are developed, some are underdeveloped, some are developing. So we normally say some are developed, some are developing. So in this situation, we have a dual economy in South Africa, because this economy consists of developed. Some of the country are developed, some of the locations in the country are developing, which creates a dual economy. We call it a dual economy because this economy is really not one-sided, it is two-sided. Some areas are well developed, there are big cities that are well industrialized. You go to other areas that are underdeveloped, also in urban areas. Ensure that no one suffers discrimination on the basis of race or gender. So it was there to ensure that the racism does not exist. It is combated completely. We have seen the success on that one going on. We've seen this objective has been achieved, because as much as racism still exists, but it's no longer as before, it's been reduced because of some laws that were put in place to ensure that people treat each other with respect and dignity. Racism does not have a room in South African economy or South African society. Develop the human resources capacity of all South Africans, meaning ensuring that people are getting to be educated, they are skilled, at the same time they have access to proper healthcare facilities and as well as services. democratize the economy, and empower the historically oppressed, ensuring that those people that were oppressed before are able to get opportunities and are empowered to own or to possess wealth in South Africa, ensuring that the economy is functioning under the figure of democracy, not on one hand, not controlled by like the monopoly. So the success and the failure, here we are checking if our RDP or if this RDP has been successful in South Africa or not. So we check the success. Remember, for you to evaluate if the policy has been successful or not, you have to know the objective and aims of the policy. You can't do evaluation on the policy if you have never done evaluation on it. I mean, if you have never, if you don't know what is it, you don't know objectives. The primary thing for you is to know objectives of the policy. What were the aims? What were the objectives? What is it that it wanted to achieve? After that, you can then look at your South Africa practically to say, okay, they say they wanted to eradicate poverty. Are we really without poverty in South Africa? Then you can start to bring an argument. Then they said they want people to have access to basic needs such as water, electricity, shelter, sanitation. Then you look at your area or in South Africa. Are we really all having access to such things in South Africa? Then you can be able to answer the question in terms of evaluation. It is very important for you to understand the policy's objectives before you are able to then to answer the higher order question where they say evaluate the success and the failure of RDP as a developmental policy. So let's check the success. It emphasized both the supply and demand side of the economy in meeting basic needs. The government created an increased demand for goods and services. So in the situation we're talking about the success, it's been able to ensure that people are able to afford their basic needs. People are able to earn income so that they can be able to demand goods and services. And also businesses are fully supported so that they will be able to improve the supply of goods and services. The production of goods and services, public work program, and infrastructure were mostly labor-intensive. This helped to alleviate unemployment and poverty. Yes, the public work program that had been created in South Africa so far have been labor-intensive. They've been able to create short-term job opportunities for those people that were unemployed. And at the same time, those people were able to acquire or to achieve or to get skills that are necessary for them to use even in the future after their contract have lapsed. So this showed the success because there's been really improvement on lives of people because of the implementation of RDP. Social achievement, building houses, providing clean water, electrification, land reform, healthcare, and employment. Yes, most of this has been achieved, even though we still have people that are not having proper shelter in South Africa. This is mainly caused by maybe because of urbanization. We know urbanization is creating the issue of having people influxing to urban areas, and then even though houses can be built, but there will be establishment of new informal settlements that will lead to high demand for shelter or housing. Providing of clean water, yes, we can say also that there have been an improvement there because we have seen water being mainly provided, running water and pipe water, being provided in South Africa in most of cities, including rural areas. And in those areas where there is no proper running water, there have been water cans being provided by municipal offices. Electricity, we have seen mostly, even in rural areas, electricity being installed, having people access to electricity. That has been achieved. Land reform, we have seen South Africa talking about land reform policies that include land redistribution and land restitution, ensuring that people are able to reclaim their land that got lost forcefully. Healthcare. We have seen South African government improving healthcare facilities to ensure that everyone have access to healthcare facilities and services. So that can also be emphasized by the new form that has been signed by by our president. What we call this national national health insurance. And then also employment has been achieved. There's been improvement in employment, but normally or mainly short-term employment opportunities for people that were employed by community projects or by EPWP. So that has been slightly positive under the RDP. And then we continue. The failure of RDP. Economic performance was disappointing. Real GDP growth was erratic. Unemployment continued, and poverty reduction and improved sales delivery has not been successful. Yes, we can say also on the side there's been a failure on the RDP because, as we say, that it aimed at ensuring that people have access to basic needs. In some parts of South Africa, people are still without the basic needs, but there are some authorities that are existing in those areas. People are also involved in participation through voting because we are under democrats. However, basic services are not made available in those areas. We talk about rural areas. Rural areas are still neglected mostly in South Africa because I think authorities believe that development should only be done in towns. That's what creates urbanization. People end up moving from rural areas to urban areas for better opportunities and also for better social welfare, because if you are staying in rural area, you'll find that people are talking about load shedding, but in that area there is not even installation of wiring for electricity. So in that case, there's a problem. That means there are areas that are totally underdeveloped. So there have been an issue of underdevelopment, an issue of negligence in some areas in South Africa where people are without running water. People still use water that are collected from rivers. So there's still a challenge because people are still neglected. So as much as RDP is in place, there is a centralization, not a decentralization. Some regions are not doing what they should be doing. National government is not doing its own duties somehow, somewhere. Provincial governments are not doing that, which is also somehow, somewhere. So that's why there are some areas that are still neglected and there's no development taking place in them. There are some children in some areas that are still traveling a long distance to reach out to schools. That is because there's a lack of development. Also, healthcare facilities are not made available in some areas, which is difficult for people really to experience the better living and improved standard of living. The program could not reach out to all South African disadvantaged societies. Some rural areas still lack basic needs such as water supply, housing, healthcare, and electricity. Like I've mentioned, some rural areas are still affected by the situation. If ever you happen to watch TV, you can only see this if you maybe watch The Cutting Edge. It will tell you exactly some scenarios that are happening in South Africa. Some places and areas are still very much underdeveloped and they are ignored. So, but those people are mainly participating in the economy. They are mainly participating in the democracy. They are voting, but they are totally ignored. So RDP in those areas is totally ignored as a developmental policy. Then we talk about GIA, growth, employment, and redistribution. So this one was formed in 1996 to complement RDP, meaning to ensure that it tried to achieve some objectives that were established or formed for RDP. It is a growth and development policy focused on broadening economic growth and development by ensuring that macroeconomic objectives are met. And then also GIA was aimed at strengthening economic development, increasing employment, redistributing income, and creating socio-economic opportunities for the poor. So you can see that GIA is here, but GIA is still talking about some objective that were aimed by the RDP. Hence, we are saying it was there to complement RDP. GIA was formed to promote export-oriented economic growth, meaning if the economic growth is export-oriented, that means it focuses on ensuring that most of the goods are produced and sold abroad. Then our economic growth is mainly based or embedded on exported goods and services. To increase employment and stimulate economic growth through foreign investments. The aim was to ensure that it attract more foreign direct investments into South African economy so that there will be job creation and also there will be economic growth within the country. We have seen most of initiatives being created to attract foreign direct investments in South Africa. However, with that still being in place, our economy is still not really doing the way it is planned for. It is planned. So it's still very weak or not increasing at the rate we expect so that it can be able to meet basic needs of the society. Price stability and exchange rate stability are some of the aims of the GIA. It was formed to ensure that prices are not increasing drastically. In that situation, ensuring that inflation rate really move within the target range of between 3 to 6%. And then also ensuring that our exchange rate does not appreciate and depreciate with huge limit. It can appreciate and depreciate because it's a free floating exchange rate. However, it does not really move with huge limits because that will disadvantage our economy. GIA aimed at promoting more active participation of private sector and improved economic growth. It was there to ensure that the private sector is participating openly in the economy, to ensure that there is accelerated economic growth within the country, to ensure reduced budget deficit. The aim was also to ensure that the government doesn't mainly use borrowed money in order to finance its budget, but it reduces the budget deficit. To ensure fair redistribution of income and wealth. So this one is also aiming at ensuring that income redistribution is in place, inequalities are reduced or eradicated. There are no economic imbalances that are huge within South Africans. So looking at these objectives, it is easy for you to do your evaluation, because you look at the first one, export-oriented economic growth. Really, there's not been success on that one, because if you can check, our economic growth has not been doing well. It's been the bad scenario, especially you take from 2021 until today, or even go back further. We have never achieved our objective where GIA aimed to achieve 6% economic growth. We haven't achieved that for a longer period of time, which means that our economy has not really grown according to South African objectives. And then create employment. So if you can check this one of employment, yes, the aim was to create employment through foreign direct investment. So South Africa is one of those countries in the world that is faced by a high level of unemployment. So for that sake, we can say we have not yet been able to achieve the objective, because we still have a lot of people and youth that are that are unemployed. Basically, also people that are skilled enough to be employed, but they are still unemployed. Price stability has been slightly achieved, because we have seen that inflation rate still move within the target range of between 3 to 6%. Even though we experience the normal increase in prices, the Reserve Bank intervene and do its own duties. Exchange rate stability, yes, as much as our exchange rate is getting weak and weaker, if you can compare from maybe 2012 until today, our rand to the dollar, our rand has lost the value drastically. But then it does not increase in the with huge margin over a short period of time. And then GIA aimed at promoting more active participation of private sector. We have seen private sector participating in the economy effectively, and then ensure that it reduces budget deficit. No, this one has not been achieved. We have seen that South African budget is still faced by the issue of the deficit, because most of the money we use, or most of revenues that are used to plan budget, are the borrowed funds from international organizations and other world countries. Ensure fair redistribution of income. As much as government have tried to use progressive tax system to ensure that high-income earners are taxed more than low-income earners, and low-income earners are beneficiaries, as much as also have seen the government ensuring that it provides the benefits in natural benefits and kind for South Africans, that has been the minimum way of ensuring that people have access to basic needs. However, really, as for our wealth, most of wealth in South Africa is owned by very few people, and then most of people in South Africa, or most of the population, are owning less wealth. This simply tells us that the GIA policy has failed under ensuring fair income distribution. Yes, there are policies in place that are trying to achieve that, but really it is difficult to achieve that. Also, we know that corruption has contributed a lot to ensure that inequalities are stretched in South Africa. How so? Whenever money is allocated through budget to maybe to bring a project in a particular area, that money can be used to benefit some specific individuals. That alone stretches inequalities, because if ever the money that is planned for infrastructure is 10 billion, you'll find that the money that gets stolen is more than 5 billion, and the project will not be continued or cannot be completed because of such actions. So that alone has stretched inequality that existing in South Africa. So we can clearly say, as much as government has tried to ensure that it reduces imbalances in South Africa and inequalities, or ensure a fair income distribution, but there's been some failures in there, because some authorities have been trying to benefit themselves at the expense of the entire society. So let's check success part of GIA. GIA was successful on achieving price stability through inflation targeting of between 3 to 6%, even though last year we did experience the increase in inflation up to 7%, but then the Reserve Bank intervened immediately to ensure that inflation is cooled down to be within the target range of between 3 to 6%. It achieved greater financial discipline and reduced budget deficit. Yes, it did manage to reduce budget deficit, but still we are still there, because most of the money that is used, or revenues used to plan our budget, is borrowed from foreign organizations or foreign countries, or also international organizations. The government introduced balanced economic redistribution measures to try and reduce economic inequalities. Yes, we have seen them being in place to ensure that former marginalized people are the most beneficiaries. However, that has not been really the case. On the given stake, on the given 100%, those people that are marginalized have been only getting 10%. 90% is taken by the people that are supposed to provide those services to the society. So there's been a struggle on neglected people or neglected areas to benefit through this policy. Since the introduction of GIA, franchise of export promotion policy was evident, and the trade deficit on the current account was slightly reduced. Yes, we have seen that our trade deficit on the BOP has been slightly reduced because of the promotion of export, so that South Africa would be able to receive revenues of foreign currencies in South Africa into the economy after selling goods abroad. And then we continue with evaluation. Which are the failures? The economic freedom of most South Africans has not been achieved. Income gaps and economic inequality still exist. Yes, we see that income gaps are still existing within South African population. Rich people are too much rich at the expense of the poor, and poor people become even poor. So that's the situation. As much as we know that the state is trying, but that is too low for people really to live above the poverty line. For instance, if ever the government will say, if you are unemployed, you will be receiving 350. So let's check. As South African, basically, how much do we need in order to meet our basic needs? Like, we have to get necessities and food. Really, 350 will not be enough, because that money cannot meet someone's basic needs. So in that situation, we are still having a challenge of unfair income distribution. The exchange rate instability remains as a major challenge, which makes South African trade to be more vulnerable. Yes, our currency or our exchange rate is still very weak compared to other world countries, because we are unable to really trade effectively in the globalization. We can't grow easily because of our weak currency. South African financial discipline shows inconsistency in state debt are roaming around 60% on the main budget. That's an issue also. State debts are too high. So that means under financial discipline, we are still really not achieving the main objective to ensure that we are disciplined and we reduce budget deficit. South African economic growth has been below 6% since 1996. As much as the objective was to achieve 6% economic growth, but South Africa has never achieved the growth of up to 6%. But our population growth is increasing above. So that simply means the leakage that we get in the economy, it is unable to meet all basic needs or to create opportunities for everyone, because the population growth is faster than economic growth rate in South Africa. Unemployment remains as a critical challenge in South Africa, which has resulted in high social and economic instability. Yes, because of high level of unemployment, we have been facing social instabilities and economic instabilities. If people are unemployed, obviously there will be a high level of crime, because people want to earn living. So if they cannot earn living in the better way, they try to be involved in illegal activities, which result to social instabilities. Also, economy has been unstable because most people are unemployed. So that simply means that most people are dependent on the government to provide them with what you call the basic need and transfers. So the government now is under pressure to provide for people on the liquid budget. So that's why we even talk about the budget deal that has grown drastically, due to the fact it's caused by the fact that most people in South Africa are dependent on government transfers and support. So people are not independent, are not independent the most because of high level of unemployment. They are indeed vulnerable, and their living standards are being eroded by the fact that they are unemployed. Then we talk about ASGISA, Accelerated and Shared Growth Initiative. So ASGISA is the anti-poverty strategy formed in 2005 to replace GIA. So GIA did not succeed on its own. Then ASGISA came in to see that it could be able to achieve some objectives. One thing for sure, I can tell you that all objectives that were aimed by GIA were not achieved, and GIA did not succeed. So it was formed to introduce strategies and policies and intervention to reduce poverty. If we talk about reduction of poverty, yes, some people have been able to escape poverty because they've been able to access education, or youth getting bursaries, and also national student financial aid for them to access universities. Then after that, they are able to get jobs. However, poverty is still the main concern in South Africa. People are still earning income that is below the poverty line, which means some people living with that is still remaining undermined. And then also, reducing poverty and unemployment are key focus areas of ASGISA. Yes, it was focusing on ensuring that poverty and unemployment are reduced in South Africa. And then the above objective will be met through investment in labor-intensive industries to create employment for less skilled labor force. We've seen, especially under agriculture and mining, people being employed and using machines. That's a labor-intensive part, where people are getting jobs and using machinery or equipment. So in that case, we have seen the achievement in the under agriculture mostly, we have seen people being employed. However, lately, we are coming across a situation whereby there are new ways of working under agriculture. Human resources no longer highly employed but the new technical system is used to replace the labor force. ASGISA aimed to halve unemployment and poverty by 2014. Remember, when ASGISA was formed, unemployment was mainly around 28%. So the aim was to ensure that unemployment decreased to 14% by 2014. So that was not achieved. That's why I said to you, it is very important for you to know the objective of the policy before you can mainly evaluate. You need to know your South Africa, know those indices or indicators that are used in South Africa. So if you are aiming to achieve or to halve unemployment to 14% at least by 2014, but one thing for sure, you can really be with me on that one. That objective was not achieved because unemployment has even increased further to 32%. So that's an issue. It was not achieved. Even poverty, it was aiming at reducing poverty. Remember, if you cannot reduce unemployment, that means poverty remains an issue because, remember, employment is a source of income that can be there to eradicate poverty. So with unemployment, the unemployment and poverty are in proportion. If we have high level of unemployment, you also have high level of poverty. If one can reduce unemployment, that means poverty will also be reduced or alleviated in South Africa. It was aiming to achieve 6% increase in economic growth by 2014. So let's check. Did we manage to achieve? No, South Africa did not achieve the 6% increase in economic growth, but instead, economic growth has been decreasing slightly until today. There has not been the effective growth in economic growth over the past years. Improved infrastructure investment to create a good business environment for local and foreign investors. Yes, this one has been achieved. We have seen South African government improving basic or critical infrastructure in South Africa, such as improving electricity, ensuring that there are proper roads, improving telecommunication. These are the basic, or we call them critical infrastructure, because we cannot have some projects going on without availability of these kinds of the infrastructure. So this one has been well managed, has been successful. We know that South Africa is one of African countries with best infrastructure or well-done infrastructure. To promote private sector investment priority in tourism, business processing, and biofuels because they are labor intensive. We have seen tourism industry being well promoted, and we know that it has improved very well in South Africa, also contributing massive in South African economic growth. Increased investment in skill development through education. We have seen the government, ensuring that youth is able to acquire skills. We have seen funding being given to ensure that youth is able to acquire skills so that they can be marketable and employable. So we have seen sector of education and training authorities being in place to ensure that the youth is able to get access to those skills where they can use their hands so that they become productive citizens, and also they can create their job, they can create job opportunities. And then we continue. Now we are checking evaluation. What has been the success of ASGISA? South Africa has achieved better infrastructure development to open opportunities for local and foreign investors. Yes, South Africa has been able to improve infrastructure. That one is very great. You can see mostly in urban areas or big cities that mainly attract foreign investors. We have seen infrastructure being developed, even though we are not 100%, but infrastructure has been improved. We see like now we have what we call the Gauteng project going on in Gauteng, which is a very big project, and it attracts most investors and business people. And then also our airports are at the world standard. We have seaports, so we are doing very well as for infrastructure, but mainly in economic hubs, not in areas that are not mainly economic centers like rural areas. Labor-intensive job opportunities slightly increase in integrated industries to accommodate less skills labor force. We have seen EPWP program being in place to ensure that people are able to get job opportunities, and then they acquire skills that can be used even after a contract has lapsed. So that's a part of the success. we continue with the evaluation, the failure. So if in this situation, ASGISA failed to have unemployment from 28% to 14% by 2014, it did not succeed on that, like I mentioned before. And then also, it failed to meet the economic objective of achieving at least 6% economic growth by 2014. It did not achieve economic growth of 6% by 2014. So, and then also inequality and poverty has increased in South Africa over the past years. We've seen poverty increasing drastically in South Africa because people remain unemployed. And then youth unemployment remains as a major concern, which continues to cause social instabilities. Yes, since youth is unemployed, even if they are skilled and educated, that then has resulted to the increase in social instability and also increase the high level of crime in South Africa. If you can check the intentional state published, we know that South Africa is one of the countries with about 5 countries out of 10. We have 5 5 towns or 5 big towns or cities out of 10 in the world that are the hotspots with crime. We have high level of crime in South Africa, and that is caused by the fact that people want to live a better life, which might be caused by the fact that people are unemployed, people are living within poverty, including some other criminal activities, by the way, we know that. And then we continue. The new growth path, which is NGP. New growth path is the growth and development policy formed in 2010 to reduce the level of poverty, create job opportunities, and reduce economic inequalities. It aimed at improving cooperation and forge better relations with African countries. We've seen that happening the most in Africa. To improve relations with BRICS countries, we've seen relations being strengthened with BRICS countries. To promote more labor-intensive economy so that the high level of unskilled labor can be addressed, could be addressed. Yes, labor-intensive labor, we have seen that happening slightly, but it is declining because industries are now investing on machinery and equipment or modern technology, because we know the cost of labor is becoming more expensive. Identifying areas where unemployment creation is possible on a large scale as a result of substantial changes in conditions in South Africa and globally. To create the millions of new jobs in South Africa, South African needs, and then also to deepen the domestic and the regional market by growing employment, increasing incomes, and undertaking other measures to improve equity and income distribution. To widen the market for South African goods and services, although a stronger focus on export to the region and other rapidly growing economies. So most of these objectives have not been achieved, but some have been achieved. So we'll look at evaluation for this policy. Restructuring land reform to support smallholder schemes with comprehensive support around infrastructure, marketing, finance, extension services. Upgrading employment in commercial agriculture, especially through improved worker voice measure to support growth in commercial farming. We have seen this one has not been successful because people under agriculture as employees have been suffering until today. Even though we have the likes of minimum wage in place in there. Accelerating exploitation of mineral services by ensuring an effective review of the mineral rights regime. Faith in support for manufacturing to encourage activities that can generate employment. Aim to create 5 million jobs by 2020 and bring about a new, more inclusive, labor-absorbing, and efficient economy. Now, let's see the success. Which part that has been successful under NGP? The NGP was able to eliminate unemployment through the implementation of labor-intensive program. Yes, jobs were created, but the thing with this one is that as much as jobs are created that which are labor-intensive, they are temporary. After some time, those jobs will be lost, which means people go back to be unemployed. It succeeded to forge closer ties with BRICS countries. We have seen that South Africa is working very close to BRICS countries to the point that they've been reducing even trade barriers amongst each other to ensure that they participate easily, or they exchange goods and services, capital, etc., easily with one another. We have seen relations being strengthened even further, where they want to develop FTAs of treated areas to economic union, or also common markets. Even now, they want to form what we call economic monetary union, which is now the biggest stage of economic integration. The failure. South Africa saw worst decline in employment since 2020. Remember, because of COVID-19, most of industries had to shut down due to the fact that the economy was held on due to the fact that there was that COVID-19 that was in place. So industries that were still in France could not succeed to go on. They had to shut down. Then people lost their jobs. So for that sake, then from 2020 until today, some people are still unemployed because of COVID-19 issue. Poverty and inequality widens in South Africa, resulting to further social instability. Remember, if ever there's unemployment, poverty will always be there, because where will people get income if they are unemployed? Where will people get income if ever they are not creating there are no self-employment opportunities for themselves? Jobs created were not substantial. So as much as jobs were created under labor-intensive practices, but they were not substantial because those people also lost their jobs after contract has lapsed. New growth path could not succeed to reduce unemployment to 15% as planned, with South Africa's unemployment rate at 32.9% in the first quarter of 2024, according to Stats SA. So we are still facing the challenge. As much as objectives are there or aims are there, but South Africa has not been able to achieve most of those objectives. The National Development Plan (NDP), which focused on ensuring that all of its objectives are fully achieved by 2030, but because of COVID-19, it's likely possible for them to be pushed to 2035. Let's see. As trying to increase access to high quality and relevant education and training and skill development opportunities, including workplace learning and experience, to enable effective participation in economy and society by all South Africans and reduce inequalities. So most of these objectives that were planned by NDP: firstly, reduce inequalities; secondly, reduce poverty; thirdly, create job opportunities. So those things South Africa is very much struggling on those three indicators. South Africa is struggling to create jobs. South Africa is struggling to reduce poverty. South Africa is still struggling to ensure that it reduces inequalities. As much as government is trying, but really it's been struggling to ensure that inequalities are highly reduced in the country. Most of the National Development Plan objectives were planned to be achieved at least by 2030. And then the NDP objective enforce economic development as they focus on social welfare and less inequality. So we call this one a developmental policy because it mainly concerns with the social wellness or social welfare. And then strategies of NDP: raising employment through faster economic growth, improving the quality of education, and then skill development and innovation, and then building the capacity of the state to play a developmental transformative role. So let's check. Raising employment through faster economic growth. We can see if we do evaluation, then it will be difficult for us to say we've been accessing the situation because our economic growth has been dire. And then improving the quality of education. Someone might be confused if we talk about the quality of education. So yes, as much as there's a quality of teaching and learning, but the quality of education here can be seen to be achieved if youth is able to create opportunities for itself. If ever youth is able to use its hands to create job opportunities and also alleviate poverty, if they are able to really ensure that they start their own business with the skills that they've acquired at the maybe basic education level or higher education level. So there's a lot to be discussed in the situation or strategies of NDP. And then we continue. Aims of NDP was mainly to eliminate poverty, ensuring that people are not living within poverty, reduce inequalities by 2030, which is seen to be a steep hill for our South African government, because poverty remains as a main issue unless the government intervenes through its own redistributions by providing those transfers and redistribution to people that are unemployed. And then increase economic participation of marginalized groups for better standard of living, ensuring that people that are marginalized are able to participate in the economy freely. But that's still a challenge, because as much as people are unemployed, it will be difficult for them to participate freely in the economic mainstream. According to the plan, South Africa can realize these goals by drawing on energies of its people, growing in inclusive economy, building capabilities of enhancing the capacity of the state, and promoting leadership and partnership throughout the society. So it can mainly be achieved if ever this is in place. Without this, it will be difficult for South Africa to achieve its objectives that were planned by the NDP. Evaluation. National Development Plan is an ongoing strategy which has not reached its main objectives. Yes, because we are talking about 2030, then we have not yet achieved the objective that are planned by NDP. So it is difficult to say it has not been successful. But citing from 2012 until now, which is 2024, it is almost 12 years old. So we can still have a say in this one to say has not been successful so far, because South Africa remains as a vulnerable country, and people remain as vulnerable society in South Africa because of high level of poverty and unemployment. Inequalities remain as the main concern in South Africa because few people are having access to more wealth and more people are having access to less wealth. People are still marginalized. Job opportunities are still not yet created to ensure that people are living better, under better conditions, to ensure improved living standards. So we can still argue on that to say so far it has not been successful based on those facts. So really, believe me when I say you must know the objective of the policy for you to be able to evaluate. You cannot evaluate the policy without knowing objectives. Remember, these are 8 mark questions under 3.5, 4.5 or additional parts. Then we continue. South Africa is experiencing widened inequalities in the country, rated as one of the most unequal. So in the world, we know that South Africa is one of the countries with most economic inequalities. So if we say we want to achieve the objective of reducing inequalities that was planned in, from GIA in 1996 until today, then it was planned by NDP. We are still very far because in the world, South Africa is the country that is at the highest with economic inequalities. You will remember that when you were doing your Lawrence curve last year in your grade 11. So we have an issue. These objectives are not easily achievable. They will take a long period of time. And also for them to be achieved, it can take the government to really commit and also use the legal resources we have efficiently without trying to be self-sufficient. Government redistribution measures are not enough to close the existing and growing gap between middle class, working class, and the lower class. Remember, we have lower class. Those are people that are really struggling and dependent on the government for support in terms of social transfers. We have working class, which are people that are having those skills and they are employed. We have the middle class, which are people that are mainly owners of the main factor of production, which is capital and land. So we have an issue. If these remain as the case, it is difficult for South Africa to achieve objectives that were planned by the NDP. The current economic condition indicate that indicate economic instability. This makes marginalized group to be even more vulnerable in the economy. Yes, if we are not having positive growth in the economy, that simply means people that are poor will remain poor. So this is one of the challenges. It is very difficult as much as we plan. South Africa, like if I can tell you, it's having great objectives and great strategies to ensure that we have economic growth and a well-improved society. However, implementation becomes a problem because as much as budget is allocated to ensure that those objectives are met, but really inefficiency remains as an issue. In there, we have an issue of allocative inefficiency, we have an issue of productive inefficiency under the public sector, like we once spoke about public sector failure. Remember, this objective can mainly be achieved if the government is fully involved and participating to ensure that they participate under the principle of transparency and accountability so that the public funds can be used to achieve this objective that are aimed to benefit people in our societies. The country's employment capacity has declined over the past 3 years, which increases poverty even further. Remember, like I said, that if ever we have unemployment, showcase we have poverty. There is no way that people can be unemployed and have income. Where do they get income? Because the lower income they earn from the government is stable. Whenever it increases with a very small margin. And at the same time, our inflation rate is increasing faster than that stable income with their earning, which even make poverty to even worse because their buying power will be losing, will be declining or will be eroded by the increase in inflation. So that is one of our challenges that we are facing in South Africa. We have JIPSA, which is a joint initiative in product of skills acquisition, is a developmental program launched in 2006 to address issues regarding unemployment and shortage of skills. So we have seen South African government trying to ensure that skills are improved. This is the skill empowerment arm of ASGISA, and then launched in 2006 to address the country's chronic problem areas such as unemployment and skill shortage. And then we continue. The aim is to identify urgent skills needs and needed needs and quick and effective solutions, such as special training programs, re-engaging retirees and drawing immigrants with the necessary skills, as well as to focus on developing skills in infrastructure project management. So these are basic skills that were planned or aimed by JIPSA to be achieved in South Africa. And then evaluation. Has it been successful? Let's check. Skill development has been on top of South Africa's government objectives. Yes, we have seen that. Various human resource development strategies have been implemented or been in place, and some are currently in process to equip unskilled individuals so that they can become productive citizens. Yes, we have seen that. The introduction of SETAs, Sector of Education and Training Authority, has skills based on labor-intensive opportunities. Yes. Unemployment, however, remains as a major concern for the nation. It sits at 32.9% in the first quarter of 2024. So as much as it aims to ensure that skills are there for people to be employed, but unemployment remains the case. Why? It is because our industries are not fully supported by the state, and then we still have infant industries that are having less capacity to produce. The EPWP expanded public work program. So this one is a nationwide government's intervention strategy to create employment using labor-intensive methods and to give people skills they can use to find jobs when their works are done under EPWP. And then this program is a key government initiative which contributes to government policy priorities in terms of a decent work and sustainable livelihoods, education, health, rural development, food security, land reform, and fight against crime and corruption. So with EPWP, you can see in your community, we have seen people wearing those work suits that are orange written in black at the back, EPWP. It is the one that is mostly visible in our locations where people are given those smaller projects for them to earn living. Then we continue. EPWP aims to achieve decent employment through inclusive economic growth. Also, labor-intensive methods. We have seen that most they don't use machines or equipment there. That they employ people or workforce to work. Methods which allow the drawing of the significant number of participants into the program to do the work. Also used to provide infrastructure in rural areas. So it's normally provide or maintain. So the EPWP maintains existing infrastructure in our neglected areas, in our communities. And then let's look at evaluation. So the success of EPWP expanded public work program has been functional to give opportunities in underprivileged areas where there is high unemployment and poverty. We have seen it being in place. People have been able to acquire skills from EPWP programs that can be used even in future after their EPWP program have lapsed. So that has been success. People employed under the program have managed to acquire skills which allow them to be self-employed in future. Yes, we have seen that as a part of success. After working under EPWP program, people can still use those skills to be self-employed. And then also jobs created have been labor-intensive, which has contributed to unemployment relief, but for the short term. Jobs that have been created by EPWP program have been short-term job opportunities, not long-term. After some time, those jobs will be lost, and then people will go back to be unemployed. But the best part of the matter is that as they become unemployed after, they still have skill that can be used for them by themselves to be self-employed somewhere else. The failure of this EPWP jobs have not been substantial. When project lapse, people are immediately employed, so that's an issue. But the benefit is that they remain with skills. The broad-based black economic empowerment. The broad-based economic empowerment is one of those policies that were formed to ensure that former marginalized people are able to participate in economic mainstream, giving them priority. The BBBE replaced BEE due to notable weaknesses. Remember, BEE did not function very well because of fronting. There was a lot of fraud that was in place and corruption that was in place. The funding were mainly aimed to benefit former marginalized people, but some people that were privileged even before were beneficiaries by using black people as fake owners of businesses and companies for them to, to have access to procurement. Challenges of black economic empowerment were grounded on fronting. the intended recipients of BE were not reaping the benefits it was originally needed to. So wrong people were benefiting. The incorrect people were benefiting through procurement policy, while former marginalized people were used to front for other benefits. BE could not have the sound or the main impact as it was planned on improving economic power of Black people and reduce economic inequalities. And then the aims of BBBEE aim to improve economic participation of South African marginalized people in the economy. This is to ensure that people are able to get skills and participate in the economy. This is to ensure that former marginalized people like Black people are able to occupy high positions in the workplace. So ensure that people are having access to procurement, they are able to own basic resources or main resources such as capital. It focus on ensuring that they procure and get opportunities to participate in the economy at the higher level. Land restitution and redistribution has been conducted in terms of set goals. BBBEE aims at implementation of inclusive economic policies within the large goal of national empowerment, targeting historically disadvantaged people such as Black people, women, the youth, rural communities, and disabled people. BBBEE creates dimensions within our economic landscape at multiple levels. So employment equity, social economic development, skill development, preferential procurement, and then enterprise development. So some objectives of BBBEE: empower local and rural communities to have equal access to economic opportunities, increase access to infrastructure, skill training programs, and economic activities for Black people, improve human resource development of Black people through programs such as learnership. So we have seen internships and learnership being in place as a part of BBBEE. Empower Black people to manage our own businesses by including Black women, workers, communities, and cooperatives, etc. Promote investment that leads to broad-based participation in the economy by the Black people. Evaluation: has it been successful or not? BBBEE continues to be actively used as a reform policy. Companies are assigned to assess whether they are achieving BBBEE objectives or not. So companies are having scorecards to see if they are really achieving the intended objectives or they are not achieving it. Then the scope of BBBEE is broader than the BE because it focuses beyond management and ownership. Introduction of BBBEE has endorsed many Black-owned businesses into procurement. We have seen that happen. Small, micro, and medium enterprises appear as a future of South African economy as they are given financial support to grow. And then we continue with the failure. Political interference has been seen. Has seen BBBEE funding benefiting those in political power than marginalized. We have seen that happening. Beneficiaries become mainly people that are involved in politics, not people that are really marginalized. So that is making BBBEE to fail in South Africa. Corruption remains as a major concern since those in power use funding to benefit from the BBBEE funding. So they use funding, meaning they use other people as beneficiaries, while they are the main beneficiaries behind. So that is hindering the success of BBBEE. The process of quality and acquire procurement is not made clear to all small businesses. Businesses in rural areas are not beneficiaries. Not mainly in rural areas, even in townships, they are ignored. They are not really benefiting from BBBEE. They are not even given certificates to procurement. So that alone is a challenge because most of small businesses owned by Black people are neglected. So those people are not becoming beneficiaries of BBBEE. The introduction of this economic redress policy have seen huge economic inequalities between Black people, with politicians becoming business owners while marginalized people become followers. Yes, with the BBBEE in place, we have seen in South Africa most of politicians becoming billionaires because they normally use this policy to benefit themselves and their families instead of benefiting the entire society and people that should really be reaping benefits under the BBBEE. So this has seen widened gaps between Black people themselves. Black people, now there's a new segment that has been created by BBBEE. Black people to black people, there are huge gaps on equality created by this, this program or this program of BBBEE, because now black people benefit themselves at the expense of other black people, which creates even poverty, and black people remain trapped under poverty because of the fact that there is a high level of corruption that is in place because of BBBEE. NSDS, National Skill Development Strategy, a strategy to increase access to high quality and relevant education and training and skill development opportunities. So this one aimed at improving workforce. It includes work-based learning and experience to enable effective participation in the economy and society by all South Africans and reduce inequalities. It aims to at addressing the challenge of skill shortage in South Africa. It was developed as a result of the formation of Skill Development Act and focus on trades such as nursing, plumbers, welders, electricians, finance, and administration. Evaluation of NSDS. It managed to improve the level of provision of same-skilled workers in the labor market. Yes, we have seen that. Sector of Education and Training Authorities improved skill acquisition for unskilled youth and provided them with an opportunity to be marketable and employable. Yes, we have seen that these sectors that are in place are allowing people to get skills and be able to start their own small businesses after all. This became a mechanism to alleviate poverty on a certain degree. And then lack of skill, however, remains as a major concern in the economy, since there is still a very high rate of unskilled people. Small Business Support Program, Promotion Program. So SPP was formed in 2014 to support and thereby promote growth of small businesses or small, macro, and medium enterprises. It ensured that new enterprises are properly monitored, supported, and nurtured to encourage SMMEs. SMMEs are acknowledged by the government as being critical to the growth and development of the economy. And then this support program has seen many small businesses exposure. Labor-intensive small businesses have increased over the past years, leading to less dependence on employment, but creating job opportunities for themselves. Why SMEs are important? So SMMEs are important because they create job opportunities. So they create much job opportunities within our locations. Instead of having to go there, look for the job opportunity, then SMMEs are nearby ourselves, and then we get job opportunities. We can also employ ourselves. The average capital cost of job created in SMME sector is lower than in the big sector, business sector, I mean. It allows for more competitive markets where consumers will benefit from wider variety of goods, more competitive at the lower price, by the way. It can adapt more rapidly than larger organizations to changing preferences and trends. So remember, SMMEs or small businesses are able to be nearby people. They can do surveys and hear what people need. Unlike bigger businesses, they're at the higher level, so it is difficult for them to go down and hear what people need. So the small businesses are within communities. They interact with people. They simply try to transform themselves based on the needs of the societies. We continue with their importance. Often local resources are used, which has a ripple effect in the development of other industries. They use their domestic resources in the area. It provides opportunities for aspiring entrepreneurs, especially those who are unemployed, underemployed, or retrenched. And then workers at the smaller end of scale often require limited or no skills or training. They learn on the job. So in these SMMEs, one will simply get job without a skill and then will be learning on the job. So that simply means even non-skilled labor can be recognized and they can get skill as they are employed. Subcontracting by large enterprises to SMEs lends expansion to production process. It plays a vital or important role in technical and other innovations which can lead to the world of successful, highly qualified competitors in the future. Evaluation of SMMEs. Positive. As evaluation of economic growth and development policies. Since 1994, our economy has become more integrated into the global market. So that's a success because we have seen our economy being involved in the global market, and slightly we are becoming competitive with the government intervention through export promotion. Public finances were established and public debts to the GDP ratio decreased. Inflation brought down to a stable average of between 3 to 6% since the formation of these policies. And then we continue. Infrastructure development has produced growth in gross fixed capital formation. We have seen mostly infrastructure being developed, forming mostly investments in the country growing. Introduction of local small businesses has been seen improve local economic activities. Because of those small businesses being introduced in our own small areas, there have been improvement of economic activities because we are able to employ each other. Negative. The economy is unable to generate enough employment, resulting in continuation of poverty and inequalities. The economy has grown consistently, but our economic growth rate are below the growth rate experienced by other emerging economies, lower than the population growth rate. That's an issue. Skill development system has not yet achieved its aims. Economy remains constrained by lack of skills, special skills, by the way. Jobs has been created in some sectors, but lost in others. Unemployment rate remains high. South Africa struggles to attract foreign direct investments. We continue. The lives of millions, developmental ones, lives of millions of people have been improved in terms of provision of housing, access to basic services, gender equity, primary healthcare, etc. So this is evaluation on economic development policies. Social grants have been expanded to more than 15 million recipients, which means the improvement is there. Every household is receiving about 6,000 liters of free water and 50 kilowatts of free electricity every month. Aims of economic equity are being addressed through a progressive tax system and the BBBEE. So we are achieving that. Number of people living in poverty has declined. However, the rate of decline is very, very low. Total BBBEE transactions have increased, meaning there has been the transfer or redistribution of income from the government to other people that are in need in our communities. And then we continue with the negative outcomes. High level of youth unemployment results to high dependency rate. Youth is dependent on parents and the government because of unemployment remain as the main issue. High infant mortality rates and low life expectancy remains as an issue. South Africa ranks low in terms of certain social indicators such as life expectancy. Infant mortality rate also is too high. Then education has increased in terms of access, but not in terms of quality. We have seen people are having access to education with funding given by the government and also financial support. However, the quality has remained at the lower level, not equipping our people to be even entrepreneurs and start their own business or becoming even more creative. High level of income inequality increase. There have been high level of income inequality in South Africa. It has increased. We have seen most of rich people becoming richer at the expense of the poor. The North-South divide. With the time, I will try to be quick. Remember, this one is economic division between developed and developing nation, which is known as also the development continent gap. So development gap or continent gap is one of the concepts used to describe the North-South divide. Countries are classified between developed and developing nations based on their economic performance. Developed countries are part of G7 countries, which are regarded as first world countries in the world. The most of effective developing countries are the part of G20 in the world. And then developed countries are believed to be the part of Northern Hemisphere in the world, while developing countries are believed to be the part of Southern Hemisphere in the world, even though we have developing countries as a part of developed countries being in the Northern Hemisphere. We continue with the North-South divide. So here we talk about unequal standard of living, globalization challenges, as well as environment that will lead us to the end of the lesson. So here we compare the following: the per capita income. So per capita income, or people living in northern countries enjoy high real income per capita and can therefore afford more goods and services and experience high living standards because their income is too low. It's too high. They have decent jobs which pay them income that can easily uplift their standards of living. And then also we talk about life expectancy. Individuals living in the north, they have access to advanced and readily available healthcare facilities, resulting to long lifespan. Their life expectancy is too high compared to ours in developing countries. The access to advanced healthcare reduces diseases and make them easily sustain themselves. Then we continue with the North-South divide. Education. People living in North are more literate and enjoy more years of schooling. So those people have access to education. There are no constraints to education like in developing countries where one can pass very well but cannot get the entry into the university. For instance, we find that people have got their matric at the good quite, but universities are not having enough space to accept them. That alone is a challenge in developing nations. This empowers them to earn high wages and salaries. And then the average of developed countries' citizens are educated and are more marketable. And then we then check southern countries. So in comparison, they have lower per capita income, which result to them having lower living standards. And then they lack skills and training, which result to them earning less income, which disable them to have civilized living standard. And then some of them live within condition of absolute poverty, where they really have less income that can sustain themselves. The income they earn is below the poverty line, which means that some of them cannot afford even their basic needs. This is what happens in the southern hemisphere or developing countries. The majority depends on the government fee services and transfers for them to survive. We'll continue with the southern countries. Life expectancy. Obviously, individuals living in the south have access to less advanced healthcare, resulting to the shorter lifespan. So their life expectancy is lower compared to that one of developed nation, because they have poor healthcare facilities, which result to them not having to improve their life even easier. They cannot sustain themselves easier. And then also, many diseases exist and people are more vulnerable as a result of malnutrition, HIV and AIDS, and also some chronic diseases. And then we continue education. So most people living in the south are less literate or less educated. So it is difficult for them to be creative and innovative. That's why we lack even technology, because we are really creative in southern countries. This limits their earnings capacity as the supply of unskilled labor is very, very high. High level of unskilled labor result to low level of creativeness, innovation, and the production. Remember, if the labor is unskilled, those people become less productive citizens. And then we continue. Now we talk about the globalization challenges faced by developing countries. So remember, globalization is the worldwide interaction of economies or of countries with the trade as the main important component. So countries in the north maintain that globalization is progress, but many developing countries are disappointed with the globalization in these three areas, namely, we have poverty, we have the issue of growth, and then we have the issue of trade. So let's check in detail. Like I mentioned before, when we're talking about these things, there is a growing gap between the rich and the poor, especially in African countries. So poverty remains as a major concern. So the only continent that has experienced increase in the disparately poor people was sub-Saharan Africa. And then as we continue, the constant increase in population size with less economic growth increases poverty. Increases the poverty in developing areas. We know that if ever there's more population, our countries in developing countries are faced by high level of population growth. They cannot easily control their birth rate, while economic growth is very, very low. That is creating an issue to be even dire or worse in terms of poverty. Poverty is even going further because now people are unemployed and population is increasing faster than economic growth, which result to our local firms being unable to create enough jobs for people in the countries. Industries in developing countries are have less capacity to employ excessively increasing population size. And then we